At 8 a.m., Karen Laspisa jolted awake to the sound of the doorbell. Her 19-year-old son, Bryce, was supposed to be home by now, finishing a long overnight drive from Northern California. Maybe he'd forgotten his keys. Maybe he'd arrived earlier than expected. But when Karen opened the door, Bryce wasn't standing there. A California Highway Patrol officer was. He told her Bryce's beige Toyota Highlander had been found wrecked near Castaic Lake, more than 100 miles away. The back window was shattered. The car was abandoned. Bryce was gone. In that moment, the previous 24 hours, his strange messages, the unexplained delays, the uneasy phone calls in the dark, snapped into focus. What had seemed confusing now felt ominous. A young man had driven all night, stopped for reasons no one could explain, crashed violently near a remote lake, and then disappeared without leaving behind a single clear answer. This is not a story about rumors or sensational speculation. It's a reconstruction of known events, documented actions, and the fragile mental state of a 19-year-old in the final hours before he vanished. Welcome to Bad Things. Join us as we trace the disappearance of Bryce Laspisa and try to understand what most likely happened. Bryce David Laspisa was born and raised in Illinois, an only child to parents Karen and Michael Laspisa. In 2012, after graduating from Naperville Central High School, he and his family relocated to Laguna Niguel, California. He enrolled at Sierra College in Rocklin, a suburb of Sacramento, to study graphic and industrial design. Friends and family described Bryce as charismatic, creative, and close to his parents. He maintained good contact with them throughout his time at college, and was in a relationship with another student, Kim Sly. There was no prior history of mental health issues or legal trouble that raised red flags. Nothing in Bryce's background suggested he might be planning to leave his life behind. In the final weeks of August 2013, Bryce's behavior took a noticeable turn. On Tuesday, August 27th, he sent Kim a text message that read, "You'd be better off without me." The message came without context or warning and effectively ended their relationship. That same day, he gave away several personal belongings. His roommate Sean Dixon received Bryce's Xbox gaming console and a pair of diamond earrings that Bryce had once received from his mother. In a message to Sean, Bryce wrote, "I love you, bro. Seriously, you're the best person I've ever met. You saved my soul." These were unexpected gestures, and those close to him began to worry. It was later revealed that Bryce had not been sleeping and had been using Vyvanse, a prescription stimulant typically used for ADHD, though Bryce did not have a prescription. Combined with alcohol consumption, his friends noted that he had become emotionally unpredictable. According to Karen Laspisa, Bryce's friends called her during this time to express concern about his mental state. On Wednesday night, August 28th, Bryce drove from his apartment in Rocklin to Kim's apartment in Chico, roughly 90 miles away. Kim was alarmed by his state when he arrived. She later said he seemed agitated and not in a condition to drive. Worried for his safety, she took his car keys. Around 10:30 p.m., Bryce called his mother and explained the situation. Karen spoke with both Bryce and Kim by phone. Bryce insisted that he was fine and wanted to drive home to Laguna Niguel. Although Kim was hesitant, Karen agreed and told her to return Bryce's keys. She offered to fly up to check on her son, but Bryce reportedly said, "Mom, do not make any flight. I have a lot to talk to you about." Bryce left Kim's apartment in his Toyota Highlander at approximately 11:30 p.m. Cell phone records later showed that instead of returning to his apartment in Rockland, Bryce immediately began driving south. At around 1 a.m. on Thursday, August 29th, he called his mother and said he was on his way. Karen assumed he would arrive home later that day. By 9 a.m., Bryce had traveled more than 350 miles, but ran into trouble near Buttonwillow, a rural area along Interstate 5. He ran out of gas and called roadside assistance using the family's service plan. A man named Christian from Castro Tire in Buttonwillow was dispatched to help. Christian later reported that when he arrived, Bryce was parked on a remote access road. He provided 3 gallons of gas and noted that Bryce appeared coherent, though his eyes were slightly red. Bryce told him that he was headed to Laguna Niguel. Based on the time and distance, he should have arrived there by around 3:30 p.m. But Bryce did not continue south. He remained parked at the same location for hours. At some point during the afternoon, Karen called Christian again, concerned that Bryce had not arrived. Christian drove back to the same spot where he'd seen him earlier and found Bryce still sitting in his vehicle, in the same position. It was now after 3 p.m. Christian told Bryce that his family was worried and encouraged him to get back on the road. Christian later said he was concerned enough that he followed Bryce as he drove south on Interstate 5, trailing him for about 10 miles to ensure he stayed on course. Christian then phoned Karen and confirmed that Bryce was back on the freeway at approximately 8:30 p.m. Bryce continued driving through the night. At 11:30 p.m., Karen and Michael went to bed, expecting their son to arrive home sometime after midnight. When he hadn't arrived by 12:30 a.m., they began calling his phone. At 1:50 a.m. on Friday, August 30th, Bryce returned the call. Karen asked where he was. According to her, Bryce said he was driving, but it was too dark to see any road signs or landmarks. He sounded tired, but not panicked. At 2:08 a.m., he called again and said he was pulling over to sleep in his car. "I got off the I-5, he reportedly told her. "I'm in a suburban area. I'm going to sleep in my car a few hours." Karen agreed that was a good idea and told him to call her when he woke up. Surveillance footage later obtained from Castaic Lake Recreation Area showed Bryce's SUV entering the area at 2:15 a.m. It was seen again on camera at 4:29 a.m., more than 2 hours later, entering the same area. Authorities have noted that it appeared as if Bryce had circled back. At 5:30 a.m., a California Highway Patrol officer responded to a report of a car accident at the lake's main boat launch road. At the bottom of a 15-foot embankment, officers found a tan 2003 Toyota Highlander overturned on its side. The rear window had been shattered outward. Inside the car were Bryce's phone, wallet, laptop, and other personal belongings. There was a small amount of blood on the headrest and driver's seat, suggesting he may have suffered a minor injury, but there was no sign of a major injury. Bryce himself was gone. Investigators determined that the back window had been broken from the inside, likely using a car emergency tool found out of place in the vehicle. Footprints at the scene indicated that someone had climbed up the embankment back toward the road. From there, a large-scale search was initiated around the Castaic Lake area. Search teams included helicopters, dive units, ground searchers, and dogs. Canines provided by the police tracked ascent from the crash site toward the lake's edge, then across the dam to a nearby road and truck stop. At that location, the scent trail ended. Search dogs brought in on separate days reportedly followed the same path. The implication was that Bryce had reached a populated area. It was unclear whether he had gotten into a vehicle or simply disappeared from the area on foot. Over the following days, search teams combed the lake and the surrounding brush, ravines, and hills. Castaic Lake reaches depths of up to 200 feet and divers scanned much of the area near the boat launch. Nothing was found. On September 4th, a burning body was discovered near the lake in connection with an unrelated homicide. It was not Bryce. Several possible sightings were reported in the months that followed. A red-haired young man seen in a gas station in Valencia and another in Arkansas, but none of these sightings were confirmed. Bryce's digital footprint went completely dark. No bank or credit card activity, no phone calls, and no confirmed social media use were reported after August 30th. By the end of September, the active search was scaled down. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department continued to treat Bryce's case as a missing person investigation. Captain Mike Parker stated, "It's a tragedy he has not been found, and the unknowns that go along with that. Frankly, it breaks our hearts too." Bryce's parents made repeated visits to the lake area in the following months, distributing flyers, speaking to locals, and continuing their own search. Years later, the case remains unsolved. Every August, his family shares updates, maintains the Find Bryce Laspisa page, and continues to ask the public for help. As of now, there have been no confirmed sightings, no evidence of foul play, and no known reason for Bryce's disappearance. Only a wrecked vehicle, a trail that fades at a truck stop, and the absence of a 19-year-old young man whose journey home came to an inexplicable end. When a person disappears as completely as Bryce Laspisa did, speculation becomes inevitable. In the years since his SUV was found crashed near Castaic Lake, several main theories have emerged, each offering a different interpretation of what might have happened after he vanished into the early morning darkness. The following outlines the core possibilities, based only on known details. Foul play. Some believe Bryce encountered someone after the crash who harmed him, whether by random chance or targeted intent. The nearby truck stop and surveillance blind spots leave room for the idea that Bryce could have met a stranger in those hours, especially if he appeared disoriented or vulnerable. That could explain the sudden disappearance, especially if he accepted help from the wrong person or was intercepted without warning. While no evidence of a struggle or theft was found, a clean crime scene isn't impossible, just uncommon. Voluntary disappearance. Another possibility is that Bryce chose to vanish. The gifts to friends, breakup with Kim, and ambiguous final texts could all point to a decision to walk away from his life. The trail ending at a truck stop has led some to suggest he hitched a ride and started over under a new identity. If that's the case, Bryce has succeeded in staying completely off the grid for over a decade, leaving behind his money, ID, vehicle, and all connections. It would be an extreme and clean break, but not without precedent. Psychological crisis, accidental death. Bryce had been awake for days, mixing stimulants and alcohol, and showing signs of erratic thinking. Under this theory, he experienced a psychological break, either psychosis, exhaustion, or dissociation, and wandered into the wilderness after surviving the crash. Disoriented, possibly injured, and unfamiliar with the area, he may have died accidentally, by falling, becoming trapped, or succumbing to the elements. The terrain around Castaic is difficult and remote. It's possible his remains were simply missed. Decided to end it. The final theory suggests the crash was intentional, and a culmination of Bryce's mental unraveling. Some investigators believed the SUV was deliberately driven off the embankment, with no signs of braking. If true, surviving it may have only delayed what Bryce intended to do. He may have entered the lake or sought another method out of view. While no note or final message was left, some of his actions in the days prior, including saying goodbye and giving away personal items, do fit this grim possibility. When a noise is stripped away from Bryce Laspisa's disappearance, what remains is not a puzzle built around strangers or secret plans, but a young man in visible distress whose behavior steadily unraveled over the course of several days. The clearest explanation, based on everything known, is that Bryce's own mental and physical state led him into a situation he could no longer manage, one that ended with his death near Castaic Lake. By the time Bryce reached Southern California, he had likely gone without real sleep for more than 2 days. He had been drinking, misusing stimulants, and showing signs of significant psychological distress. Close friends noticed. One of them contacted Bryce's mother directly, warning that he might hurt himself. He gave away most of his valued possessions. He told his girlfriend she'd be better off without him. He sat for hours in a parked car for no clear reason, and when asked why, could only say he was blowing off steam. These are not the actions of someone following a coherent plan. They're the signs of someone in crisis. What happened at Castaic Lake appears to be the final turn in a steady descent. Surveillance footage showed Bryce entering the area twice before dawn. Investigators later said there were no signs of braking before the vehicle went over the embankment. Some interpreted the crash as intentional, but intentional doesn't necessarily mean resolved. People in psychological turmoil often hover in a space between impulse and hesitation. Crashes like this can be an act of desperation rather than a definitive statement. After the wreck, Bryce used an emergency tool to break out the rear window and leave the SUV. He did not use his phone, though it was there. He did not wait for help. Instead, he walked into the darkness. Search dogs followed his trail away from the site and across the dam to a nearby truck stop. That's where the scent ended. From that point, Bryce was gone. No security camera footage, no confirmed sightings, no trace. The landscape around Castaic is vast and uneven. It's steep, overgrown, and largely unlit at night. Searchers have repeatedly acknowledged that it would be easy for someone to vanish there, injured, confused, or simply exhausted. It's the kind of terrain where you can miss things even if you're looking straight at them, one deputy said. The simplest reading of the facts is this. Bryce did not want to go home, but he didn't know where else to go. After the crash, disoriented and possibly injured, he walked into unfamiliar terrain and never made it back out. He may have drowned in the lake. He may have collapsed in thick brush or fallen into an unseen drop. Whatever the case, no one else appears to have been involved. No plan seems to have been carried out. It was a young man unraveling in real time. The hardest part of this explanation is also what makes it believable. There is no final moment of clarity, no confession, no decision that ties everything together. Just a steady slide into something unmanageable. Bryce's belongings stayed behind. His voice fell silent, and whatever happened next occurred just far enough out of sight that no one has found it. It's a conclusion based not on guesswork, but on the shape of the story itself. What was said, what was done, and what was left behind. Until someone finds a piece of clothing, a bone fragment, or something conclusive, it remains a theory, but it's the one that fits the person, the pattern, and the place. The Laspisa family has never stopped searching. Every August 30th, they post updates, keeping Bryce's face in public view. Still no answers or closure, they wrote in 2024, 11 years on. What they seek now is not just hope, but truth. And while that truth hasn't surfaced, the outline of it seems increasingly clear. Bryce didn't disappear because he wanted to vanish. He was overwhelmed, adrift, and alone. And something happened in that darkness that kept him from ever coming home. Do you want to bring bad things with you wherever you go? Our episodes are now available as a podcast. Look us up on your favorite podcast app and listen to the most truth-seeking true crime podcast out there.